Hablamos. Hey, hi, hello. Check, check, check. 1, 2. Check, check, check. 1, 2.
Sound check for Pablo.
Sound check for Pablo.
Transmission from New York City.
Transmission from New York City.
Live.
Live. Is that good?
An April breeze on the wings of spring, and you appear in all your splendor, my one and only love. The shadows fall and spread their mystic charms in the hush of night, while Now you're in my arms. I feel your lips so warm and tender. My one and only love. The touch of your hand is like heaven, a heaven that I've never known. The blush on your cheek whenever I speak tells me that you are my own. You fill my eager heart with such desire. Every kiss you give sets my soul on fire. I give myself in sweet surrender. My one and only love. My one and
and the tulip trees are blooming, and there's not another human in view but us two. except for daisies running riot, and there's no one passing by it to see. Come spend this lazy afternoon with
Cut.
sweet embraceable you. Embrace me, my irreplaceable you. Just one look at you, my heart grows tipsy in me. You and you alone bring out the gypsy in me. I love all the many charms about you. Above all, I want my arms about you. Don't be a naughty baby. Come to Papa, do. My sweet embraceable you.
I can see the stars come through my room while your loving attitude is like a flame that lights the gloom on the wings of every kiss. Drifts the melody so strange and sweet in this sentimental bliss. You make my paradise complete. Rose petals seem to fall. It's all like a dream to call you mine. My heart's a lighter thing since you made this night a thing divine. In a sentimental mood, I'm within a world so heavenly, for I never dreamt that you'd be loving sentimental me. In a sentimental mood, I'm within a world so heavenly, for I never dreamt that you'd be loving sentimental to me.
You are too beautiful, my dear, to be true, and I am a fool for beauty, fooled by a feeling that because I had found you, I could have bound you too. You are too beautiful for one man alone, for one lucky fool to be with, when there are other men with eyes of their own to see with. Love does not stand sharing, not if one cares. Have you been comparing my every kiss with theirs? If, on the other hand, I'm faithful to you, it's not through a sense of duty. You are too beautiful, and I am a fool for beauty.
Hi. And you're Richard. Are we ready? Yeah, yeah. So, I think we're ready now. Thank you, everyone, for attending Shipping Climate, Addressing the Triple Planetary Crisis. We are so appreciative that you could all be here. This is a very important issue for Foundation Coda Solaris, Mary Foundation, and Velux Foundation. We have worked on it for a couple of years now. We saw that the development within the International Maritime Organization had a lot of remit and had a lot of focus on reduction of the CO2 emission. However, we thought as foundation that there is more pressures on the oceans that need to be addressed, and shipping is one of them, of course related to CO2, but also related to the other biodiversity impacts which is occurring from shipping as one of the activities. There's many others, and this is just not to out any industry. We are working on a lot of other issues as well, but this we thought was timely with the fact that the International Maritime Organization in 2023 adopted a greenhouse gas strategy, and we actually think that what is one of our aim as foundations working together from Denmark and from Chile, the North-South Cooperation, that it's important to establish synergies between conventions and synergies between initiatives. And we saw that the strategy, the greenhouse gas strategy from the IMO would be a unique opportunity actually to include also biodiversity concern and pollution concern for that matter. So our adventure started a few years ago, and last year we hosted a workshop in Monaco during the Monaco Ocean Week. We also had a workshop in Malmö with the World Maritime University, so we're sort of bringing it all together and working across sectors and with the different UN entities. But before I give the word to Natalie Hilmy from the Center for Scientifica de Monaco to give a short summary, I want to give the word to Richard Garrett, which is the president of the Explorer Club and has explored space and ocean. So you have everything in perspective. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, welcome everybody here to the Explorers Club. And for those of you who aren't as familiar with it as those of you who come here regularly, the Explorers Club is about 122 years old now, and has what I like to describe as sort of 3 eras of exploration. That we're now in this a 3rd era. In the earliest days of the club, there were still unexplored parts of the world. And so those earliest explorers were taking a lot of personal life risk in order to discover the boundaries of the geography of the world. The poles hadn't been reached, the top of Everest, the bottom of the ocean, and a lot of the things we celebrate downstairs in our lobby. But for about the next 50 years, the Explorers Club is really about 85% of our members are scientific field researchers, so people bringing back scientific data to share with the world. And the other 15% are filmmakers and poets and artists who help those scientists communicate that in a way that is hopefully moving to the general public to take an interest in things like climate. But interestingly, I think we're now in sort of a 3rd era that started maybe 10 or 20 years ago, where climate issues are now so politically charged that a lot of people and politicians in countries around the world have sort of dug their heels in and sort of made up their mind as to whether this is something that they need to pay attention to or for some reason have elected not to. Or I think there's other priorities that are more important. And so now, at events like this, here at Climate Week, what I'm always excited about, and I'm excited to hear from our amazing panelists, is that people now are here not just to ring a bell and express the problems that are there, but also to very specifically describe solutions. And often, a lot of our explorers are out there building the solutions and trying to scale those solutions, and they come back from the field, frankly, trying to raise money to help literally go out, let's just go fix it. And this attitude of, yes, the world is an incredible number of crises, but we are the ones that have to fix it. And so let's figure out how to do that and go do it, I think is critical. I know your panelists here are experts in the area of shipping. Obviously, with the globalization that we've now seen around our planet, shipping is not going to go away. It's still going to be the dominant form of trade that, if anything, will continue to grow. Humanity's needs will grow in that area. And so it's something we really have to get right. And so I look forward to the discussions and debates, and I hope you all come out with fantastic solutions in addition to articulating well the problem with accuracy so it can be solved. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Richard. I think this was an excellent introduction. As Denmark just had an astronaut in space, one of his findings of what was really breathtaking, he said, and I think that is really reflecting of the panel we have here, so many people from around the world, is that he said, well, there is no borders. We all have responsibility for the oceans, the earth, because we all need to cooperate. Because it's not like nature or ocean knows that there is a border where they have to stop or anything like that. So I think that's really timely for Natalie to give a presentation on the outcomes of our Monaco workshop. Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Patricia, for inviting me. In Monaco, we have the Monaco Ocean Week every March. And with Foundation Mary, we decided to have this Blue Economy Roundtable. The first one was about fisheries. And the second one, we had the Foundation of Charlotte Velux, who came to join us to talk about shipping. And we will see all the economic sectors related to the ocean every year. So what we have done is to put together natural scientists, economists, and policymakers to have science-based solutions. And this was very important because we don't want solutions like, we don't know if they work or not. We really wanted them to be science-based. And this is what we tried to do. It was a transdisciplinary workshop. And we had 4 working groups. One was about economy and finance, one about institution and governance, one about science and environment, and the last one about technology. All were talking, of course, about shipping. And I'm going now to give you a quick summary of what has been said on the governance group. And we talked about MPAs. MPAs are very important to protect the ocean, to protect our biodiversity, and nature will help us to protect our planet, sorry. And this was very important, and the boat should slow down on these MPAs where there are very emblematic species like the whales, for example, to avoid the collision. So this is very important. Another important topic was about renewable energy and hydrogen, for example, to make this sector more sustainable. And it is very important to have one institution taking this together, because for the moment we have several institutions talking about the ocean, talking about shipping, and we don't have one view, one leader on this topic. So maybe this would be important to have. And then I would like also to insist on something. Developing countries have specific views, and it is important to include developing countries' viewpoints and not only developed countries. They should work together, and the financial flows should go to mitigation and adaptation. Those are the most important things that we discussed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Yes, I think, we did talk about MPAs, how important it is, and also implementing the 30 by 30 from the global biodiversity targets. It was also a discussion that we brought forward in Malmö, where we also talked about how to use particularly sensitive sea areas, PSSA under the IMO, how they could be used as a tool to manage the speed of boats and also, of course, pollution discharges from ships. With that, I want to say thank you to Natalie, and I also want to welcome our panel. Today, we have a very interesting panel that goes, broadly across sectors. We have Juan Carlos Gomez, who is a special envoy for climate from Panama. And as you told me, not only climate, you go broad, yeah. You also have biodiversity and pollution with you, yeah. And then we have Dr. Manuel Vidar, which is chair of IUCN's Climate Crisis Committee, which is very interesting as well. And then we have Anna Maria Laura, which is from the Ocean Conservancy. And also we have, of course, our co-host, Francesca Cordisolari, which is the executive president of Philanthropy Cordisolari. We have Abdella Moxid, which is secretary of IPCC. So we have a UNEP leg here as well. And then we also have Mrs. Christus, which is former Ministry of Environment from Portugal, and now a law professor, which is very interesting. And then we have Tristan Torrell, and Tristan is from the CBD. Yeah. Welcome, and we so appreciate for you being here. So I want to start with Juan Carlos Gomez. I mean, your work in Panama on, we had an event on Saturday where the Minister of Panama, the Environmental Minister of Panama, was very forceful on, we had to act now on environment, we had to act now on marine issues. So what is your priorities on shipping? I mean, you're a great shipping nation, Panama is. So do you have any priorities that you would like to bring forward, both within the CBD upcoming or with the IMO? The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation to all of you involved, and thank you for taking time, especially when there are so many other events. And if you're here, that means that you really care about the oceans and the green way towards a new maritime sector. So I'm going to be blunt. We have a window of opportunity of barely 6 months to build a global regulatory framework to transition shipping towards green shipping. And this will make the shipping industry the first hard-to-abate sector to decarbonize on time and in alignment with the Paris Agreement. But this will only happen if we make the tough decisions, well, not really tough, the right decisions that we need to take by the time that we finish with the first committee of the environmental division of the IMO happening in about 1 week. Once again, we only have 6 months left to build the regulatory framework to make shipping the first hard-to-abate sector to decarbonize in line with the Paris Agreement. That is huge. That is a very important thing, and we must accomplish it. Panama is sending its delegate to this meeting happening at the IMO to send a strong signal. Shipping must decarbonize, and we must use market instruments to decarbonize this sector. And for us, the protection of the oceans, it's very important. We have more than 50% of our maritime areas under some level of protection, achieving the 30 by 30 goal 9 years in advance. We're also a carbon negative nation, which means that we clean up the mess for others, and we are going to continue to do it as is part of the vision of Minister Navarro for Panama to continue strengthening the power of its forests to clean up the atmosphere. And on top of that, we have the Panama Canal, which is the green route of the world that allows global shipping to be a bit less polluting than what it would have been without the Panama Canal. So Panama is doing its part, and we're going to be demanding other countries to also do their part. But we don't stop there. We're trying to streamline environmental action. For example, it is absurd that we're talking about climate, biodiversity, desertification, and oceans in separate rooms. It makes no sense. Why are we trying to split nature when nature is just one thing highly complicated? So in order to walk towards a better future, we're going to start presenting our nature commitments in just one document to all Rio conventions. But we're also going to be demanding more change because the system needs to be shaken up if we really want to achieve the goals that we're setting ourselves to achieve to protect humanity on this planet. So the future of shipping is green, and as you know, the global maritime powerhouse, we're going to be there to lead this future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gomez. I think that we think you're a champion here because that is what we are trying to achieve, that the different conventions establish a synergy between them, that we don't talk about the issues in isolation. It's difficult, but we fully agree. Let's try to make a change, yeah. And then we got Dr. Manuel Vidal, Polka Vidal, and you are like chair of the IUCN Climate Crisis Committee. How do you see the challenges within marine conservation and oceans within your work?
Thank you so much. And let me add that I used to be Minister of the Environment of Peru, and because of that, President of COP20, when the action agenda started. So 10 years ago, we started with this Lima Paris Action Agenda that then evolved into being the current Marrakesh Partnership. And I am bringing this not to talk about me, for sure, but to talk about on how much we are evolving in organizing sectors with clear targets and with clear actions towards what you have just said, to have the first hard-to-abate green sector. What it is what we all are planning to achieve. So the point is, what are those elements that can make us able to be optimistic that we can do that we can move this sector, the shipping sector, into being a green one? The first one, it is, because this event, it is about how to address the planetary crisis. That means nature, means desertification, means climate, and even means plastics, because we are discussing a plastic treaty, and the SDGs. And parentheses, we have to start to think, what do we think should be the future after 2030 of the SDGs? How do we think we have to address the future of development when it is the end of the current SDGs? Having said that, the point it is, something that we have to celebrate, it is that for sure we have already agreed on the vision. We have that clear vision. So everybody understand and agree that 1.5 is the threshold, that net zero is the climate objective for mitigation, resilience for adaptation. But now, fortunately, a new kit is coming to this party, the nature positive concept, what it is good. But it is not enough to have the concept that can frame the vision. Also, it is important to give it some content to the concept, to understand well what else do we need to have to make this net zero thing feasible, something that it could be achieved in some time. Second, we have a clear time frame. We know and we have agreed that by 2050 we have to be net zero. That's clear, and even resilient to climate change. And fortunately, the discussions around the shipping sector, it's moving towards that. But look, friends, there are some champions, the early birds, as Maersk, that it is defining to be net zero even earlier. And that is so important, because it is showing that it is possible. It is showing that it is possible by championing the agenda to create a good niche for the economy. So we are always thinking that it is the opposite, that we have to wait for the political or economic signal to do something. And what Maersk is doing, that it is exactly the opposite, it is to open a new niche for a new economy around the shipping sector. And I think that that is a good lesson learned, something that we have to learn, that it must be the way to move those things forward. So we have the vision, we have champions, and we have to understand that this is about the economy. So a new climate economy is emerging in the horizon. And that is so important because I am always saying, if we are not climate responsible, or in this case, even nature responsible, it is not that the Paris Agreement or the GBF will sanction us. There is no any clause to sanction anybody. What it is good, you know that sometimes some friends are saying to me, why Manuel? So how can we have like kind of law, international law, without any ways to sanction anybody? And it is because the mechanism, it has been built based on moving in a gradual basis, step by step, as a way to build a new economy. And that new economy is emerging, and that is for me so important when it is about the shipping sector. But we have to connect dots. We have to see how can we connect our climate efforts, in which probably we have developed more maturity, more than biodiversity for sure, and it is not that I am complaining or criticizing anybody, but that is the reality. How can we continue connecting dots in relation to our climate objective, nature objectives, the certification, and even development? It is, for example, by convening the non-state actors, by having a strong action agenda, something that it is happening in climate, as well in biodiversity, and soon will happen with this coming COP of the desertification treaty, even with the certification, because it is just with the non-state actors working with governments that we will be able to achieve our objective. That is one of those elements. It is to bring those non-state actors. Second, it is by understanding the process. Because we were together in Panama 3 weeks ago, we were talking about all of this transition towards sustainable fuels for the shipping sector. And it is so interesting because we are all the time thinking we have to transition away from fossil fuel. That, as you know, that was the decision in the UAE consensus, transitioning away from fossil fuel. Look, friends, what Maersk is doing with the using of methanol, with currently 8 vessels, and have already ordered 20x more vessels, huge vessels, to work with methanol, with a dual fuel. That is a transitioning away. So it is not that we are starting from scratch. We have good models on how can we gradually transitioning away from fossil fuels. So that it is also something to be considered when it is about shipping or green shipping. But also we have to promote synergies, and that is also so important when it is about shipping. And when we think about how can we create shipping, what has just happened in Panama with this huge crisis because of some droughts and lack of rains, it is showing us how to work on adaptation. I was talking with one of the head of the Canal de Panama, and he told me, despite that we reduce frequency and volumes of vessels, we didn't lose money because we worked well on adaptation. And now we know how to address this kind of crisis for the future. And in that way, in that sense, that is connecting the shipping sector with adaptation and the nature source, the ecosystem, the forest, the protection of forests. And now Panama is working in strengthening the governance for protecting biodiversity as a way to avoid to have the same for the future. And that is fantastic. That is something that we have to learn for the future. But also to promote synergistic relations, we do need to work with ports, because ports are what connected the urban areas with the shipping sector, the nature areas with the shipping sector. And also it is related to vulnerability. It is related to floods. It is related to many of the risks that the shipping sector can suffer if we are not able to adapt. So that is also an important element when it is about on how to address the planetary crisis. But also what we do need to have, and let me finish with this, I am taking too much time probably for this question. it is we do need to have some other elements, good standards. Standards are key. I am board member of the Science Based Target Initiative, and it's clear how much SBTI has built legitimacy by defining a clear net zero standard. And even in the shipping sector, there are some companies that are following the SBTI in the 3 scopes, that it is so difficult. Now, the communities working around nature and biodiversity are developing standards based on the mitigation hierarchy around what it is called the SBTN, Science-Based Target Network. No? Because we do need to have standards, and we do need to have a clear system that can improve our performance when it is about net zero and nature positive. And there are many other elements, the use of economic instruments as carbon pricing. So what I'm trying to say, and sorry if I am not organizing well my ideas, it is that we are not starting from scratch. We have many elements that can help us to continue building and greening the sector, the shipping sector. It is possible. There are good lessons that we have already learned, and the idea is to organize all of those elements to move that sector to be more sustainable. It is possible. Let me repeat what you have just said. It's amazing that we are talking about a sector that we used to think it would be impossible to move them toward decarbonization, that it is close to get that, or close to at least define the strategy to secure decarbonization in some time frame. Let's raise that as a good example, not only for the hard-to-abate sectors, even for countries, because for now, we know that unfortunately, for the next cycle of the NDCs, that will finish by June, so the climate plans, the NDCs, that will finish by June of the next year, unfortunately, we won't have the full set of countries putting again an enhanced and a more ambitious NDC. So we do need to learn from this sector and also to bring to our countries more ambitious target, because that is the only way to put things on track. Thank you
so much. Thank you. Unfortunately, we have to say goodbye to Juan Carlos. Yeah. Now you have to leave. You have an important meeting to go to. We just want to appreciate for you to be attending and participating in our event with the perspective of Panama. And you need to get your pen with you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. And then I just want to thank you for your input, Dr. Manuel Vidal. Abdallah Moqsid from the IPCC, I just want to give the word to you, because we were talking about climate, but how do you sort of bridge the gap between climate and ocean? Ocean is also a part of your IPCC report. I know you're having an upcoming meeting, IPCC meeting, and then you have a separate one that also actually bridges the gap between ocean and climate. So the floor is yours. Does it work, or do you want this one?
No, it's working. Thank you very much. First of all, I am really, honored to be once again in this panel. I think when I am looking to these faces, I think somewhere, sometime I can say the solution is you, because this mobilization is an excellent demonstration that we are trying to do our best. So, going back to your question, yes, one of discipline, because IPCC is, considering all the disciplines. You have our 3 working groups: science, vulnerability, and mitigation, that we are really, trying to study all the disciplines, sectoral, and not only this, also even social, private, and even banking system. And we did have for shipping and also ocean a special report about climate change and ocean and cryosphere. And I think it was a special report, but I think the conclusion or recommendation are really important. We did have also in our working group 3, the one related to transport, so the chapter 10, which is dealing with transport, including aviation and shipping. And believe me that we have enough information. What I can say, I think, if you visit our website, at least at the end you can say it, we know. I think there is no excuse to say we don't know. We know that there are information, sound scientific information that we know. But something which came from our 6th cycle is 3 aspects. The warning, the hope, and challenges. The warning is saying that if everything is living in extreme rhythm, accelerated rhythm of extreme events, and also all the impact are really negative if you are not taking action. And the ocean is, having some acidity. The ocean also is, the cryosphere is melting, and the level of ocean is rising. And also, all this biodiversity is under threat. And I think this is the warning. And the warning, there is no doubt that really we should take some action to encounter the problem. But there is a hope. The hope is there, because there are many activities, many possibilities that can really be used to defend this track. I think I know that many options just for shipping, just for good intelligence, how we can, transform trajectory, how we can include some improvement even in the boats, can bring added value and can improve the capacity of shipping to be less problematic for the life. But there are challenges. Challenges are there. And challenges can be really connected to the mobilization of all segments of the population. Any action should be inclusive, should be diverse, should be sustainable, sustained, and also all these difficulties should be encountered in order to achieve good implementation. Because it is not about science, it is not about intention, it is about action and implementation, and the implementation that should be assessed and also improved and maintained, sustained in the process. And this is why I said solution is you, because let me conclude by bring you in one sort of journey. IPCC has 35 years of history. When we started in 1988 by the World Meteorological Organization and UNEP, the main objective was just to bring the voice of science, of climate, to policymakers. So scientists to policymakers, sort of collaboration. But that time, 1988, we can say we start to know. We were saying maybe, likely, but report after report, most likely, very likely, virtually certain. And now we are in very virtually certain, situation where the science is there. There is no excuse to take action. When we know, we became responsible. At the same time, believe me, I started IPCC from that time, but we cannot find a room like this where many segments of the population are meeting, discussing, trying to collaborate. And that's in here, the foundation, philanthropy is doing excellent job. Anyone now is speaking about climate change. Anyone want to do something in good sense, good direction. And I think this is why I can say the hope is there. We can implement the hope. And this is something that really very important But once again, it is not only about hope. It is about pragmatism. We should really think about how we can transform our intention in pragmatic and practical solution to be implemented everywhere. Because something success story here, if it is well transported elsewhere, adapted to that context, we can achieve a result. So I think this is the time of, let's say, migration for concept. Let me tell you, initially, everybody was talking about crisis management. We were managing things when they are there. We migrated to management of the risk. We added some time. But it is not enough. Because now the rhythm of acceleration of extreme events is too fast, too important that it is really beating any adaptation process. This is why we need to go to migrate to the concept of knowledge risk management. We should know. By knowing, I can have a good prospection, good simulation. I can gain 10 years, 20 years, 30 years to take action from now, or to be prepared. To be prepared for two things. To manage, so to have to implement reactive adaptation. I should adapt now. And with this anticipation, we can say we can have planned adaptation. The adaptation that should come in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. I think the mobilization is there. I'm repeating, once again, thank you very much. Really, the solution is you. And you can transform the hope in concrete solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Abdallah. I think it's really timely to talk about the IPCC report because I recall early in my career, many years ago, when I read the first report, and I think that the policy brief has so much improved when you're a policymaker, and I think, to make science and bridging the gap between science and policy, and I appreciate your gratitude towards, the philanthropy that is giving money to science and also giving money to the work of IPCC. Thank you so much. With that, I want to give the word to Anne-Marie Lauer. She's from the Ocean Conservancy, and I want to ask you, what can Ocean Conservancy, as an NGO, do in addressing the maritime sector and sort of bridging the gap and achieving synergies between the conventions when we talk about climate, pollution, and biodiversity? The word is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. And it's really great to be on this panel with past our ocean host, Panama, also with UN Ocean Conference host, Portugal, and the other COP hosts, et cetera. So I'm really honored to be here. Ocean Conservancy is working on three main pillars to protect the ocean: biodiversity, pollution, primarily plastic pollution, and also the climate crisis. So I thought I'd just very quickly give some examples of how NGOs like us can advocate. Our advocacy, just like country positions and all these different fora, needs to be connected. So right now, I'm here with you today because my colleagues who are focused on shipping are actually at the IMO. And what they're advocating for is the greenhouse gas reduction strategy and strong short-term, midterm, and long-term standards. And one of those things that's on the table right now, for example, is a carbon intensity indicator. This is about energy efficiency in ships. So if we want energy efficiency because we want to reduce greenhouse gases, that is also going to help us reduce underwater noise, which is a huge factor if we want to protect the biodiversity of the ocean. At IMO, there's also, just last year, they updated noise reduction guidelines, for example. Those are voluntary. They were voluntary 10 years ago, and not a lot happened. So they updated them, and now those guidelines are associated with an action plan and this experiential learning phase. They're still not mandatory. So we have these two different opportunities, something taking an action plan, a learning phase, and turning those into mandatory noise reduction guidelines, and then also reducing our carbon intensity, energy efficiency on ships, not just through fuels, but through onboard solar, onboard wind, sails, not wind energy. And so those two things in combination will make the ships more clean, will reduce their fuel usage, and will reduce underwater noise. So just there at the IMO in these two policy positions, there can be synergies. But the IMO is also, struggling to take action on pollution, and particularly plastic pollution. There's a lot of marine litter that comes from ships and lost cargo, et cetera. And so the IMO has the opportunity there also to act on pollution. Scrubbers is another really good example, a device that well-intended to take air pollution, to minimize air pollution, turned it into water pollution. So I think just in the IMO, in that one framework, we see a lot of opportunities for synergies to protect the whole ocean and address the climate crisis and pollution. But then, we've been talking a lot about cross synergies between fora. So at UNFCCC, IMO is the place where we're talking about shipping carbon emissions. But there is a ton of domestic action that can be included in NDCs and national climate plans that also helps decarbonize shipping. So we have port electrification. If we're not planning for port electrification when we update our NDCs and think about where renewable energy is coming from, then we won't be able to handle the increased demand that's going to come from ships sitting in the harbor. Last year, I think it was LA, they had a wildfire going on, so there was a lot of smoke. They had a heat wave going on, two things that are caused by climate change, and they had to send all of the ships in the harbor out to the ocean because they couldn't meet the demand that those ships needed, and they were contributing to air pollution by sitting in the harbor. So, these are really all coming together, and we have to think about ways that NDCs can also help us with shipping. And then just really quickly on CBD, a quick example, we have national biodiversity and strategic action plans. If we're not planning for resilience, as was mentioned, when we talk about ports and infrastructure, then that infrastructure is going to be affected by sea level rise and by storms, wildfires, and that will change shipping routes. You can have one incident. In the US this year, for example, we had a ship hit a bridge. That diverted a ton of shipping traffic to other ports nearby and can change routes in an instant. If we're not prepared for what those routes should be to avoid marine protected areas and sensitive habitat, then we will just be creating more threats for biodiversity by trying to address our global maritime issues. So just these are some examples of how, as advocates, but also as parties, when we're participating in these conventions, we really need to be thinking about how a position in one place should be synced with and aligned with our positions in other forums. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that sort of aligned with what they said from Panama, that it has to be the same message that you have in all conventions, and I think that's an excellent, quest for you to have that similar wish that we all address the same thing everywhere, and we sort of had consensus and synergies. With that, I want to give the word to Francesca, which is the executive president of Corde Solare. It's you now. And I just want to say, you play a really important role in the work that we're doing on shipping. You play a really important role in supporting the IPCC, whether it's land protection, ocean protection. The Foundation Corde Solare has a huge impact everywhere, actually, and we are cooperating together. So you also have an impact in Denmark, which is far north from Chile. So I just want to give you the word and say, what do you think that the role of philanthropy should be to develop solutions? The word is yours.
So first of all, thank you, Charlotte and the Lux Fonden for this partnership. Because really it's impossible to do this alone, and so thank you for all the team, to Abdallah too. Truly, if we are here today, it's because those networking and those relationships that we have been developed all over the time. So we need to work between public, private, and civil society. So I do believe that our relationship in those years we have demonstrated that this relationship is absolutely essential. We have 3 territories in Chile, one of them in Patagonia. When we started conservation in Chile, we decided to develop an effective conservation. And that means work on the threats on the territory and the species under threat. We developed the same methodology in the 3 territories. And in Patagonia, where we are now, so one of the main species under threat in the Patagonia was and still is the whale, and one of its main threats was the maritime traffic. So it was really easy, and we decided to work with the whales. And in this area, the blue whales were under threat. Yeah, actually, I'm not a scientist, and the first knowledge, well, it was a good thing not to be a scientist, maybe. Because there were a lot of scientists studies what was happening in the Patagonia at that time, but I understood that it was absolutely necessary to put the science in the middle of the topics and works with the community. So the first thing was to develop science around the whales, and we developed more than 71 papers concerning the whale situation. It was quite visionary, and we developed several expeditions with a lot of studies. And together with those scientists, we used to develop a lot of audiovisual material in order to bring this material to schools and to community. And this is how we started to work with the community, identifying the cetaceans of the zone and the locality. So this is a way that philanthropy has to bring urgency in the community and to help science. But beside that, together with everything I already explained, 4,500. So in a country like Chile with more than 4,500 kilometers of distance, with the mountains and the ocean, the Pacific. The question was, why don't we have more navigators in Chile? What is happening? It looks like Chilean doesn't know very well what is happening in our deep sea, let's say. So it was a question that she was wondering at that time. and in particular about navigation. Considering that we have one of the most beautiful fjords of the world, so we were losing the culture of the zone. So this is where we decided to develop an emblematic project, and I want to talk about it. And maybe it was one of the most important projects because it allowed us to put all the synergies and all the knowledge that we have developed as far. And we decided to develop a shift, a very sustainable shift, specifically developed for the Patagonia with solar panels, with a particular system in order to avoid a strong noise, with a particular painting not to avoid contamination. We really develop a 100% traceability in the shift. We knew that we were building something absolutely wonderful, but we never ever imagined that we would earn the Monaco, a huge prize because of the technology of the shift on Monaco this year. So put first of all the problem and then understand that there is a philanthrope and a businesswoman that decided to invest and risk on a shift, on a sustainable shift that could be able to recover the culture of the territory with the best technologies. Yeah, she get emotional. Yeah, obviously it took a long time. We worked with a lot of calculation, but we were not that sure if it would work or not. It was a kind of prototype. And the most important thing is that this boat have a certification that certify the emission of the lowest emissions in the world and the sustainability. So obviously we are proud of that. And this is what I want to put on the table. It is possible. We do this to change the navigation in our country. And at the same time, it allows us to develop other projects as Blue Boat Initiative, a scientific project in order to prevent the collision between wheels and shift. We throw a buoy, we hear the song of the whales, and we prevent the shift on presence of whales in order to avoid collision. It was innovation, it was technology, and we developed a lot of science and work around that. From the very beginning, I think from 12 years ago. We have 12 years the work around there. Yeah, today the boy is not there anymore. It was, but this is a risk. For us, the project was a success because of the work behind in terms of communication, in terms of community. So when the accident happened with the buoy, we understand that we already achieved a lot of goals. The technology already exists. We developed this technology in Chile. And this is something great. This is what I wanted to say. I tried to summarize everything, and thank you very much. And I really wish to invite the industry, the businessman. We need to invest in innovation. We need to innovate. We need to take risk. We cannot believe that we are always win. Even if we lose, actually we are not losing. Sometimes people believe that this buoy was lost, and no, actually the work is here. We are here, we are still working because of that. And thank you very much. And all the team behind, because otherwise it wouldn't be possible, and I couldn't do this alone. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francesca, on your passionate speech. And I think you do so great work in Chile that can be applied everywhere. So I think this is a project that other philanthropists can take on board and sponsor for other regions as well. Thank you so much. And then I want to go on to Professor Cordes. You were with us in Monaco. What did you take from the Monaco, and what, with your work as a former Minister of Environment, how do you see that we can move the agenda and achieve the synergies between the different conventions and also safeguard the oceans at the same time? The word is yours.
Well, thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here again, Francesca. Thank you for the invitation. Gracias por la invitación. Y es siempre un placer de oírte, tu fuerza y tu inspiración. Gracias. It's always a pleasure to hear Francisca, and the inspiration and strength and all this energy, positive energy that really brings to a room and to our work. I was in Monaco, and it was really good. I was in this ocean governance panel. And one of the things that I retain, and I think it's important because I do have, coming from Portugal, I do have the European perspective. And when we think about decarbonization, for example, shipping in this case, and when we think about biodiversity and climate goals, we always feel that we have settled, and I'm a lawyer by training, and not only at Nova School of Law, but also a practitioner lawyer. I am head of the Environment and Climate Change Practice Area at VDA, which is a Portuguese-based law firm. But seeing all the big picture, what I feel is that we have a lot of legislation, but we need the whole world to be aligned. So we have the Paris Agreement, and in Europe we have the European Climate Law, which makes it absolutely mandatory with rules, with targets through the different areas of economic activity, namely to shipping. We have in the shipping, we have the carbon pricing for shipping in Europe. We've just brought shipping inside the ETS scheme. It was not in the beginning, it is right now. The cut of emissions at the same time with precise targets. At the same time, the need to recover the ecosystems with our recently approved restoration law in Europe. And what we feel is we need pretty much all of these efforts and strength together to bring this ambition to the global level through IMO, through the different agencies of the United Nations. And this, we were talking a little bit before, how are the mandates of the different conventions. They take the mandates from the countries all over the world. So it is the word of the countries that do make a change if like-minded countries come together and ask for a raise of ambition. If Panama or Chile or Portugal, other United States are together and say, we need more, we need you to speak more to each other, because otherwise the secretaries do not have the mandate, do not have the efforts to deliver into that direction. So what I see, and when I see, I take a broader lenses, because I bring also the ESG approach, which tells us that all the companies, and this is cross-cutting, And again, the shipping companies as well need to report, need to disclose information on what they're doing, what is their carbon footprint, the scope 1, 2, and 3, how are they doing, and to deliver that information in a very transparent, precise, and credible way in an annual basis. And this will make a change because this will allow comparison. This will allow competitors to look at who is doing what. This allows consumers, and consumers are empowered and will be much more empowered in the coming years because all the digital tools that will help us, and again, regulations will help us to look at a product and see how this product traveled to my place if coming from the other side of the world, for example. How was this voyage? How was it shipped? What was the fuel that was used? What was the carbon footprint of this precise product that I'm buying? And I can decide if I'm going to buy this or that, and I will be empowered. So what I see is really a very relevant net of legislation that is making sense. And I've been, this is my third day here at Climate Week in New York, and just having a nice chat this morning about how this European legislation influences or not the rest of the world. And the fact is that it influences. And the fact is that the United States, for example, are looking at this legislation. The United States are very diverse, but for example, California law is inspired by the European legislation on disclosures of sustainability issues. This means that with more information and with the relevant tools, but with countries taking the word and pushing the agenda, and of course countries push the agenda if their public opinions are aligned with that and also ask for that. So science again and all the efforts of IPCC and all the information that we bring to public opinion is extremely relevant because at the end the governments do represent their people and they will be the voice of what they feel that is important for those countries again. But I live in New York, back to Portugal, quite optimistic and enthusiastic because I do see things moving. I do see things moving, and I feel that we have a lot of work to do. We had some good, very practical, we might say, these are details, are not details. This idea of lowering the speed, it can make a lot of difference. This idea of having the biological corridors do make a lot of this difference. That, well, must be combined with maritime spatial planning, with BBNG and so on. But I do see a lot of room, namely when we think about the coming biodiversity COP and how to finance all these options. Look at the market options, look at biodiversity credits, look at nature credits, carbon credits, and bring all that together, and we might be surprised. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Professor, it was timely that you were mentioning the CBD because we have Tristan Terrell here from the CBD, and I think he will give a little word on how the global biodiversity framework, how that actually also lines up with the challenges we have on shipping, and also your, well, the upcoming COP16, which is in next month, coming very soon. You know, how you see the challenges there and how you think that we can do. And before that, I think we need to say goodbye to Dr. Vidar. Thank you so much for attending the event. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, she just want to move up. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So, Tristan, the word is yours.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. And while musical chairs are happening here around me, well, first off, thank you very much for the invitation to speak today and to listen to the esteemed panel that we have here, all the different perspectives, plus also a phenomenal venue for this discussion. And just after hearing that introductory welcome, about the eras of exploration that this institution has seen. It just made me realize that the point where we are now in terms of how we envisage ourselves relative to the world around us, the planet and the impacts that we're having, and how we are finally coming to a point where we're realizing those impacts, what we need to be doing, because frankly we are changing the world around us, and the need to put us to re-envisage the way we see the world around us and how we go about that. So it's interesting to hear about the Maersk example about what they're doing in terms of moving towards alternative fuels, etc. And it just made me think about, well, what's the difference between focusing on climate compared to focusing on biodiversity? And so a lot of the discussion around climate, a lot of the solutions that are related to climate are largely coming down to economic reasons. Thinking about future-proofing, profitability, etc., the cost of fossil fuels going up, carbon taxing, and other approaches that are encouraging some of this change, as well as consumers wanting to see that change from the companies that they are dealing with. Biodiversity, we don't quite have such a linear engagement, I think, with some of these processes, and so maybe some of those what might well be. Yes, some of them are legislative in terms of requiring companies to change the way they act, they behave, they produce, etc. But there's also there's a certain sort of carrot side of things as well, by consumers saying that no, this is what we want to see and how we want to spend our money. With biodiversity, there is a lot of dependence on governments, in particular, to provide that legislative obligation when it comes to thinking about biodiversity, because of that somewhat disconnect between a number of sectors and the biodiversity impacts. So for instance, shipping within the Global Biodiversity Framework, the Cumbre-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, which was adopted just a couple of years ago, doesn't specifically mention shipping. The only industries that are specifically mentioned are forestry, fishing, agriculture. And then there are others about links to health, and a couple of other things. Pollution, for instance, is very broad, except it does specifically mention plastics. That might be in the context because of the current or the planned at that point negotiations on the plastics treaty. But it's very contextualized, and it doesn't necessarily think about the broader impacts. So when it comes to thinking about the shipping industry and the engagement with the Global Biodiversity Framework, it's somewhat indirect. Whereas, okay, I don't know if this shipping industry is specifically mentioned in the Paris Agreement, for instance, but in terms of, like I said, I think there's a slightly more direct link when it comes to climate. So looking at the GBF, you have various targets which are of relevance in particular to this discussion. So the ones that are looking at spatial planning and thinking about, well, what are those shipping routes that are being part of general looking at national, in particular national territories, both land, terrestrial and marine. Thinking about that spatial planning, what are we using certain areas for? Where are we putting our protected areas, whether they're marine or land-based protected areas? Then thinking about when it comes to those economic activities, where are they being placed, and what are some of those impacts that are happening there? There are a number of other targets. The highlight one, I suppose, is 30 by 30, which you might have heard. There are actually 3 30 by 30 targets within the framework, but the most famous one as such is relating to protected areas and this expectation of 30% to be designated a protected or other effective area-based conservation method by 2030, including in the marine area, which historically has been further behind terrestrial areas. But they're also relating to restoration, the expectation of restoring 30% of degraded lands and marine areas. And also funding, $30 billion being flowing by 2030 in overseas development assistance. And so there are a number of 30 by 30, but the protected areas one is certainly the most high profile. There are others relating to pollution. And the link there, of course, is with ballast water and other wastewater, as well as just general discharge from boats, from ships. Looking at the impact on invasive alien species, or the introduction of invasive alien species. Those pollution things, and thank you for raising noise pollution, which is a very important one from a biodiversity perspective. It isn't mentioned in the GBF. And so I think the point that I'm trying to get to is that there is need for effective engagement with the sector, and that interpretation that's required, that translation as such, into what is specifically important within that sector. A couple of the targets that are particularly key is about decision-making at all levels, is a very important one, and also the engagement with Indigenous peoples, local communities, and those who live in areas that would otherwise be affected by some of these activities. So thinking about fisher folk who live in those areas that have shipping coming by, and what is the impact that has on their areas, thinking that they themselves are working on a very much more subsistence level, and of course can't adapt as easily if something happens. And yes, the wildfires and that ship that hit the bridge in, was it Baltimore? You know, those hopefully relatively short-term impacts do require some sort of adaptation to deal with it, but of course not everyone can adapt so easily. So a couple of the principles that cut across the whole of the GBF is about a whole of society and a whole of government approach, and that we need to see this as not just being something for the Ministry of Environment, and even in particular the biodiversity office within the Ministry of Environment, but actually think about how this translates across to everyone. So from the CBD perspective, we're looking at the National Biodiversity Strategies and Action Plans, the NBSAPs, that are the policy instruments under the Convention. How are they being linked to the nationally determined contributions and national adaptation plans, certainly when related to climate change, but also sustainable development plans, sectoral development plans, and where's the link within those? I know in Scandinavia, Norway, for the previous NBSAP, tried to do an NBSAP specific for each sector within their government, which was an interesting approach. I'm not sure it actually particularly succeeded, but largely because it was well-intentioned, but there's that consultation that has to happen and engagement that has to happen right the way through the process, up to setting the NBSAP, defining what are the strategies and the action plans, but then also carrying through into the implementation. And we have a very short period of time. 2030 is the deadline for the GBF, as it is for the SDGs, and that's literally around the corner, frankly, scarily. But so there needs to be fast and effective implementation straight away. And ultimately, it's going to come down to money. And one, in terms of those incentives, what is encouraging those companies and the industry as a whole to make the changes required, supporting governments to actually be able to back up those legislative and other approaches that they're taking in terms of defining protected areas, carrying out the enforcement that is needed. But then there's also, just more broadly than that, thinking about, well, what are the underlying drivers towards both biodiversity loss and climate change and pollution and everything else? And it comes down to things like incentives. And where are those incentives going behind the scenes, and thinking about the trillions of dollars that is going to activities that are ultimately undermining the very planet that we're living on, that we survive because of. And we've heard so many times of people saying, well, I'm doing this to protect the planet. And people are pushing back, saying the planet will live a lot longer than we will. It's more about our own resilience. And it's also about thinking about, well, what are the driving forces behind the scenes, not just about designated protected areas or thinking about particularly sensitive sea areas, for instance, and how do they overlap with EBSAs. Those are all very important and need to be, those are important discussions that need to happen as part of those upfront approaches, but then also thinking about those underlying drivers. One of the other targets that I did want to mention was about sustainable consumption. Now, it shouldn't just be on the consumers to change their behavior, it's on the producers as well. But it's things like that. How are we as a society engaging with the planet around us, and how do we see ourselves within that? And I wish we could bring everyone into this space so that they'd have the time to reflect on how they themselves as individuals, as societies, and as the global population as a whole, how are we actually seeing our long-term future, and what are we doing about it? Thanks.
Thank you so much, Christian. And I mean, you did mention indigenous peoples and local communities, how important they are in conserving and protecting the environment. And this is our next session. It's about indigenous people, local communities, and cultural heritage. So I want to say thank you so much. We could have talked for hours on this, but unfortunately our time is up. Thank you so much to everyone. Thank you for coming.
Sunday kind of love, a love to last past Saturday night, and I'd like to know it's more than love at first sight, and I want a Sunday kind of love. Oh yeah, yeah. I want a love that's on the square. Can't seem to find somebody, someone to care, and I'm on a lonely road that leads to nowhere. I need a Sunday kind of love. I do my Sunday dreaming, oh yeah, and all my Sunday scheming, every minute, every hour, every day. Oh, I'm hoping to discover a certain kind of lover who will show me the way, and my arms need someone to enfold, to keep me warm when Mondays and Tuesdays grow cold. Love for all my life to have and to hold. Oh, and I want a Sunday kind of love. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't want a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, a Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, oh, nothing but Sunday. Oh, yeah, yeah. I want a Sunday, Sunday. I want a Sunday kind of love. Oh, yeah. Sunday, Sunday, Sunday kind of love.
Hide your heart from sight, lock your dreams at night. It could happen to you. Don't count stars or you might stumble. Someone drops a sigh and down you tumble. Keep an eye on spring, run when church bells ring. It could happen to you. I keep an eye on spring, run when church bells ring. It could happen to you. All I did was wonder how your arms would be, and it happened to
I wish you bluebirds in the spring to give your heart a song to sing, and then a kiss. But more than this, I wish you love. And in July, a lemonade to cool you in some leafy glade. I wish you health and more than wealth. I wish you love. My breaking heart and I agree that you and I could never be. So with my best, my very best, I set you free. I wish you shelter from the storm, a cozy fire to keep you warm. But most of all, when snowflakes fall, I wish you love. My breaking heart and I agree that you and I could never be. So with my best, my very best, I set you free. Oh, I wish you shelter from the storm, a cozy fire to keep you warm. But most of all, when snowflakes fall, I wish you love. But most of all, I wish you love.
You were recording as well, yeah. So, thank you everyone for attending this, and I do apologize for the lateness. We had an event before on shipping and the triple crisis that dragged on a little bit longer. It's always interesting to talk about shipping and the environmental impact. However, so is cultural heritage and climate change mitigation and the knowledge of indigenous peoples and local communities and how we can cooperate with that. So with that, I want to give the word to Richard. Richard Garrett is the president of the Explorer Club. The floor is yours.
Well, welcome again, everybody. And as you heard, I'm Richard Garrett. I'm the current serving president of the Explorers Club. And like I mentioned in the previous panel, you know, the Explorers Club has been around for about 120 years. And I would argue there have been kind of three eras. The 120 years ago, our explorers were out pushing the final dragons off the maps of the Earth, which was because a lot of the, neither pole had been reached, and there were more summits that had never been reached, like Everest and others. There's actually still some summits that have never been reached. The next 50 years was scientific field work as people went out to try to bring back the data of how the world worked, how the world was deeply interconnected, and that's was sort of the beginning of the environmental movements when people began to see the critical aspects of the natural world. But I would argue that this most recent, this last 20 years, maybe it will be a third 50-year-ish era of the Explorers Club, is people bringing back solutions. And that's what I'm excited about happening here at Climate Week, is people not just talking about, how much the sky is falling and how big and insurmountable the problems are, but basically people pulling up themselves by their bootstraps, thinking of and executing solutions, and then getting to work on those solutions, figuring out how to fund them, how to scale them, to really address the scale of the problems we do face as a planet. And in particular, since this panel is going to focus on indigenous peoples, that's actually something that we even found in our own history. Like, for example, the club was formed in 1904, and it was 5 years later before people reached the North Pole on that sledge right there. And in the 5 years that it took people to get to the North Pole, about 200 Explorers Club members died trying to get to the North Pole. And they died, oversimplification, but they died because these were usually European gentry wearing their tweed jackets and hand-knitted woolly mittens and freezing to death. And it was Matthew Henson and Admiral Perry who worked with an Inuit tribe, a village up on the northern coast of Greenland, and not only changed their clothing attitudes to understand and use the indigenous knowledge to succeed, but the way that sledge is built, if you look at it, those wooden pieces that are holding it together, there's not a nail or a screw in it. That's all tied together with walrus hide. And that was so that it had maximum flexibility compared to, say, European sleighs to ride on snow could be bolted together because everything's soft. But if you're going over heaving sea ice, the amount of torque that all this needs to take is much more than you would see in a European sleigh. And so that was a key part. Indigenous knowledge was a key part of the success of explorers through every era. And even now, we see regularly, if you look at Sylvia Earle's Hope Spots, one that's here near our club that we celebrated last year was up at Shinnecock Bay, where the local indigenous Indians of the Shinnecock Indians, as they kind of took over management of that bay, have returned it over a decade from being a sore spot from a stewardship standpoint to one that is now pristine and productive and still protected for the East Coast of the United States. So I'm looking forward to the output of today's discussions, and I turn it back over to you. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much, Richard. I think this is very interesting that they started going to Greenland. Being a Dane and knowing Greenland very well, I think we do appreciate and very much are working towards that indigenous peoples and local communities have their voices heard, that they are part of everything that is being done, all governance and everything. It's really, really important. And with that, as we are a little bit late, I want you look at this beautiful, beautiful ancestral knowledge and climate change. And I will ask Daniela Diaz to come up and present the work of Foundation Coto Solaris, and also linking up with the beautiful book that is out there for all of us to look at. The floor is yours.
Oops. Hello to everyone. I'm very happy to be here. And first, I want to thank you, Francisca, for all your support. Yeah, it's good. Okay. Okay. So first, I want to thank you, to thank Francisca for all her passion, all the love that she put in the projects with Native people and communities. Without your help, nothing of this will be possible. So that's the first thing I want to say. I know that we don't have too much time, so I will try to be very brief. And I want to also say thank you to my team. I'm the visible face of this project, but there's so many people that is behind all this. And we have put a lot of care, a lot of love. So, okay, let's start. So where do we work? We work in the Atacama Desert in the north of Chile, in one of the 3 reserves of Philanthropia Cortes Solari. This is called the Puribeter Elemental Reserve. And we work in the desert, in the middle of nowhere, where it's very hard, it's very dry, and the conditions are really hard. But even that, there are local communities that are called Atacameños Licanantay, that they have been living here for 11,000 of years. So of course, all what they have can teach us, it's a lot. So that's why we're working with them. They have a lot of culture, a lot of archaeologists, a lot of meanings in all their stories that are very important. So who do we work with and why? We work with 21 cultores, preservers of ancestral knowledge, and why we work with them. First, because they're holders of ancestral knowledge and practices that are important for dealing with climate change and biodiversity loss. The knowledge they possess should be made visible and be heard by society as a whole, especially what is happening today, right? So it's important in the conversation about how to mitigate impacts on nature. It's vital to create a registry that could be shared to promote ancestral practices. And at the end, but very important for us, is revitalize indigenous language. The language of the Atacameña Licanantay is the Kunsa, and we know that every language contains a unique way of inhabiting the world. So how do we do this? I will try to explain very brief the different stages of the project. In the beginning, it was the selection of interview subjects and research. We choose with a very, very beautiful and care team the people that we want to interview. One of them are Purikamanis, that are the caregivers of water, the Yatiris, that are the shamans, or the people that are very wise and have a lot of knowledge, and the traditional educators. All of them have a lot of knowledge about their traditions, their customs, and we really need them. So the second stage was research and design with local relevance and review. So all the things that you will see in the book, all the symbols, all the illustrations, the photography, everything has a root of investigation, of research, because we want to take care a lot of all of the knowledge of the communities and being very respectful of that. The third, and very important for us, was the review of material by the cultores. And this is very important for us, and we want to change the methodology in this point, because in general, nobody asked the communities, right? So our idea is to change that. So they review the book, not one time, not two times, a lot of times, of all the photographs, all the things that they are saying is what they want to show us and they want to teach us. So that's the point I want to make there. And at the end, and very important, was the lunch in the territory. For us, it was very important because we present the book with their communities, with their families, with their own people. So now we're able to put all this all around the world, but first it was in their own territory. And so here's the book. Here's the collection of the book, Ancestral Wisdom and Climate Change. You will find 10 books on different topics, and also you will find 21 educational videos on the cultures and their territory. You will find there their own messages, by their own voices. You can download their messages, and so you can find anything you can of the interview and everything we have made. Main conclusion of the book, very short. One of the chapters was Puri. Puri is water in Kunsa, their language. And water is very important and is in all their traditions, in all their rituals, in all the calendars. And also they teach us about the different traditions and activities that they make with water. One is called Limpia de Canales, that is the cleaning of canals. And here we can learn about Aini reciprocity and the way they connect with the element of water. So here is a sentence, little sentence that was of Rubén Colque of Alto Loa province, and it says, "In the past, water was well taken care of. To put it simple, it was shared and used in a good way. Water is sacred. According to our cosmovision, consciousness can be created, one can be spiritually reborn, return to the idea of the community, return to the ancestral." And so, well, you can find a lot of different sentences in the book that you can find, but the important is that you will find their own voices. And the second chapter was Seed, that in Kunsa means muhu, and it's important because all the ancestral memory that you can have in a seed, and also the non-material cultural patrimony, the focus on biodiversity that it has, and also the conservation of the seed, the protection of the seed, that is really, really important. And also, yeah, in Puribeter Elemental Reserve, we also have a seed bank that is very important for teaching and for the children to know all this knowledge. Erika Perez, other women that we interviewed, says, a seed is very powerful, whatever type of seed it is, it holds great power given to us by our planet, the sun, the rain, the wind, Pachamama, Patahoiri. And here's other sentence, we perform a ritual. Everything's about permission and ritual before you make something. Planting a seed in the earth because it's sacred. We seed the sack of wheat or whatever we're going to plant on the ground. First, we add coca leaves to the seed and then ask for permission from Mother Earth. I do this every year for planting. That's what said Juana Anza. And in the third and the last one is the Andean time, that in Kunza is Tiempia Lerikuchaya. And our way of seeing time in the Western is more like linear and unilateral, right? It's past, present, and future. And indigenous communities teach us something different. Teach us that the time is a spiral. Sometimes it's hard to explain, but you can see the different textiles where you can imagine how is the cycle of seeing life. And there's a time to plant, a time to harvest. There's a time to go out and a time to come in, time to move and time to rest. And they saw the time in a different way, with the moon, with the stars, with the constellations. It's other way of seeing time, it's other way of consciousness. And here is a sentence, everything works perfectly, in perfect synchronicity, that is never behind or ahead. It all happened in defined perfect timing, more perfect than a clock, because these types of telling time don't break or fail. That's Roberto Garcia of Catarpe. And here's other senses of the moon and the special, how they see that. And as a conclusion, what is the role of indigenous community in the fight against climate change? So the first idea is their cosmovision, right? It's trying to change the way we think is more centered, that the human is the center of the life. No, this is different. We are trying, the Andean communities teach us that it's more an eco way of seeing life, right? Where we have to respect everyone and everything. The second, there's sustainable practice which can be applied to everyday life, and you can find it in the book, very daily practice that you can do and being concrete with all this. And the third is the preservation of the culture and ancestry, as well as teaching for future generations. And we want to finish with this sentence that is for Pablo Cruz, and make us reflect on this is going to be just a cycle, and Patahoiri will go on, not us. We won't always be here. So I invite everyone to reflect on this, on the empathy we have for Mother Nature, not to look at her as an inanimate object, but as a living being. And all in good time, that's what they said in Andean communities. So we hope that all these books also can get to all the places that is needed. Thank you very much.
It was absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. And I think you need to reflect on that they live in harmony with nature. This is the achievement that the CBD is trying to achieve by 2050. But they already achieved it, yeah. So there's a lot of things that we can learn from living in harmony with nature. I really appreciate it. It was beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you. And with that, I think we should have the panel. We are a little short of time. So Francesca, you want to join the panel? Abdella, Michael, and also Jon Fernandez. He's online? Yeah. Are we putting him on a chair? With the computer? Yeah. Thank you so much. I think I'm going to start with Francesca, because this is like a really beautiful book, and you're doing a lot of work on indigenous people and local communities, and your work has great impact, and I think it's really important coming both from North and South that we're doing. We're working closely with Greenland and local communities and indigenous peoples there, and you are doing it in Chile, and I think it's so important to maintain the cultural heritage, and also, like they said, it's all about nature. It's not about them being on the top of anything. It's the people actually engaging with nature on all aspects, and I think that's really good. So with that, I want to ask you why you have dedicated your life to philanthropy, and how and why did you decide to publish this book? on this really important subject.
Wow. Bueno, comentar como ya, bueno, agradecer la presentación de Dani Díaz.
First of all, thanks Daniela for her presentation.
Que ella es realmente la investigadora que hizo
She
este
is really
trabajo durante
the searcher
3
who did
años.
this work for 3 years.
Venimos trabajando el año 2010.
We started together
Ya hemos
on
sacado
the
ya
2010.
tres como diría, publicaciones, diría.
We have been working in 3 publications
Uno
together.
con una comunidad, no
The
vamos a
first
nombrar la
one with a
comunidad.
community.
Después sacamos unos libros de oficio y pueblos ancestrales.
Another one
Y ahora
about
también estamos
works
sacando
and
estos
native
libros.
people, and now
Estos libros tienen algo
about this book.
especial, diría yo.
Those books are really special.
La intención principal fue tomar la sabiduría y el conocimiento de los ancestros, de los abuelos que llamamos nosotros.
The main purpose was to take the knowledge of our ancestors.
La suerte que tenemos en nuestro país que nosotros todavía tenemos pueblos originarios.
In our country, we are very lucky because we still have some native people.
Entonces eso hace que cada vez que uno entra a un territorio,
so it means that each time we
lo
enter a territory,
lo primero es vincularse bien con las comunidades.
we need to first of all have a kind of connection with the community.
Por lo tanto, yo diría de que estar en San Pedro de Atacama y el poder realizar todos estos trabajos han sido, creo que, la escuela más grande que he tenido en la vida o que hemos tenido en la vida.
So I strongly believe that have the possibility to be in the north of Chile, in the Atacama Reserve, it's my more important
Estar en el
chance.
desierto más árido del mundo,
In the driest
donde
desert
todo
of
el
the
territorio
world,
lo hicimos sostenible. Hoy día es
where
un lugar
we
que puede
develop a
sostenerse por sí
sustainable
mismo.
territory.
Y obviamente resguardar también lo inmaterial, lo que no se ve.
And where we decided to keep the immaterial patrimony, what we do not see.
Entonces nuestra urgencia aquí en temas de conservación
So the urgency in terms of
era
conservation
conservar la cultura.
was conserve the culture.
No era conservar una especie, sino era
It
cómo
wasn't a matter of
conservamos la
conserving a
historia
species in
y
particular,
lo que
but
han hecho
the
los
to
abuelos
conserve
por
the culture.
miles de años cultivando la
And their
tierra.
behavior for many, many years, taking care of their
viene el
land.
cambio. Viene el cambio,
And now we have changes.
que es el cambio climático.
We have the climate change.
Entonces hacer estos libros en realidad fue buscar algo que pudiera resguardarse esta historia,
So this book was the opportunity to keep a story,
pensando en la sobrevivencia.
thinking in the survival.
Es decir, aquí en estos libros tenemos, digo yo, como la Biblia, diría yo,
So to me it's like a Bible
de lo que es el cultivo y todo lo que tiene que ver con el agua, el cultivo, la semilla y todo lo que
the
tiene que ver
Bible
con la
about the
alimentación.
seed, about the food security.
Pero de cómo lo hacían nuestros ancestros.
But well,
No la industria.
according to our ancestor,
Hoy
not
en día
according
la
to the
semilla
industry.
está ¿cómo se dice?
Patentada.
Hoy día la semilla está patentada.
Today the seed is under license. We know that.
Y eso es un gran problema
And it's
porque
a
nos están
huge
quitando a
major
todos
problem.
la posibilidad de poder cultivar nuestra
Because
propia
native
tierra.
people doesn't have anymore the possibility
Es decir,
to
tengo que
cultivate
pagar
their
por una
own
semilla que
seed.
ni siquiera se puede reproducir.
So they need to pay for that, and they cannot reproduce their own seed.
Entonces ahí es donde digo yo, bueno, ya estamos negociando todo.
So this is where I said, well, we are negotiating
negociando la
everything.
semilla ya es llegar al fondo del problema.
When we negotiate seed, it's really
Porque la
negotiate the
semilla
heart
es la
of the,
sobrevivencia del ser humano.
of the survival of the
La semilla y el
human
agua.
being, because the seed and the water are the essential of
Así
the
que
human
bueno,
being.
agradecer a Dani
So I wanna
los
thank
años que llevamos trabajando
Daniela
juntas. desde el 2014 trabajando
For all
con los
those
pueblos
years working
originarios.
together
Dani
from
vivió
2014.
3 meses en una
Daniela
comunidad,
lives
vivió
for
1
3
año, 2
months
años
in a
en San Pedro
community,
Atacama.
then 1-2
Por lo
years in San
tanto,
Pedro
no hay otra
Atacama.
persona,
So
por lo
there
menos
is
que
no
yo
one
conozca,
else
que
at
tenga la
least that I
habilidad
know that
de poder
have
trabajar con las
those
culturas.
abilities to work with
Actualmente
the
estamos
culture.
trabajando con comunidades más
Currently,
hacia la
we are
Patagonia.
working
Esperemos que
with
el
communities,
proyecto
but in
vaya dando su
Patagonia.
fruto porque no es
And we hope that
fácil,
this project is
pero
going to
esperamos
work
que
too,
haya
because it's not
voluntad de
easy.
poder entregar
But we
también
hope
su
that
conocimiento
the
también
willingness
las
will be there,
comunidades del sur
and that the
de Chile.
community of the south of Chile would
Así
be
que
able
bueno,
to
eso,
bring
muchas gracias
their
por estar
knowledge
acá
too.
y
So
gracias
thank you very
también
much
a
to
todo el
everyone.
equipo de Chile.
And thank you for the Chilean team.
Una de las cosas también de este proyecto es de que tratamos de que todas las
One
personas
of the
fueran
things of this
originarias, es decir,
project
del
is that we
mismo San Pedro
try
Atacama.
to work with
Por
the
lo tanto,
community,
las
and
imágenes, los
all the
videos,
images, the
las
videos,
entrevistas,
the interviews.
porque además de esto hay 20 videos que tenemos.
Because to get beside that, we
Que
have
no
20
pudimos,
videos.
como que no podemos
We
presentar
cannot
todo,
show
pero
everything,
hay
but
20 videos
we
detrás
have
de
20
esto.
more videos behind
Por lo tanto,
each
bueno,
book.
aquí hay mucho por entregar,
So there
así
is a lot
que
of
les pido
material to
ayuda
bring
también, que me
and
ayuden
to deliver.
a poder
So I
comunicar
ask
esto al
you
mundo,
to
a entregarlo al
help
mundo.
us to communicate this to the world.
Imprimimos 500 copias,
We print
250 en inglés,
500
250 en español.
copies of
Nosotros
this,
no podemos
300
vender,
in English and
solamente
200
podemos
in
hacer de que
Spanish.
esto
Obviously, we're
llegue
not
a las
going to
personas
sell
que
this.
tengan que llegar.
So we just wanted
Y ese sería lo que yo les
to
pediría.
communicate this
Así
and
que
to
gracias
display
por
this
eso y
information
gracias
to
a todo el
everywhere. So
equipo
thank you
de
everyone,
San
and
Pedro
thank you
Atacama,
for
a
the San Pedro
Carmelo,
Atacama's team,
un
to
saludo a Carmelo
and saying
y
hi to
bueno, a
him.
todos los a todas las personas que participaron, que realmente
And
para
to all
ellos
the
fue difícil
participants.
también
It wasn't easy for
entregar
them.
su
It
conocimiento.
wasn't easy
Tuvieron
to
dudas,
bring their knowledge.
las tuvieron,
They had some
pero ahora no
doubts.
tienen las dudas.
But
Y
today
yo
they
les
don't have
prometí
doubts
que iba a
anymore.
sacar esto al mundo
And
y
they
aquí
understood
estoy.
that
Y les pido
it's a
ayuda a
good
ustedes
thing
también.
to bring their
Gracias.
knowledge to the rest of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Francesca. That was an excellent description of the origin of the book and your interest for native people in Chile, local communities and indigenous, and their knowledge as well. With that, I want to give the floor to Abdella Moxid, and maybe you could just talk about how indigenous and local knowledge is included in the work of IPCC and how you will bring that forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Also, let me start by an observation, because I am a meteorologist and I like to observe. And when Daniela was making presentation, we feel that she's enthusiastic. And not only this, even slide of people they were, interviewed, they were also enthusiastic. And also, was something I observed also when Francisca was looking at you. So I think it was same feeling. That means that this is something we should raise. And also, as I said, even in the presentation before, when we start IPCC, we didn't have such situation. After 35 years, we have a good situation. Some philanthropy are also trying to do their best to involve people to speak about themselves, not to speak about them. And this is something excellent. So, and also, this also showed to me that something that is coming even from, I think, we are in the United States, and he said, this example, but I will apply it to the earth. You should not ask what the earth should give to you, but you should think what you could, give to the earth and to save the planet. And I think all the people interviewed, we feel that they are really liking to conserve. They are using the planet as their family, their member of family. Now, going back to the IPCC. So, yes, you're right, because assessment after assessment, we have some statistics. It is clear, it is a statistic, are numbers. And if we start from first assessment cycle, the number of indigenous representation was low. Now, cycle after cycle, because our cycle is from 5 to 7 years. The number of scientists coming from indigenous are increasing. Not only this, we have even coordinating lead author and lead authors contribution to our report. Not only the cycle, the main report, working group 1, working group 2, and working group 3. Also special report. I want to say that in the last cycle we did have special report on the climate change and land, and the number of scientists from indigenous region was really high. And this is something which was really important. Now, as IPCC is considering many areas, as I said, it is not about meteorology, climate, it is about vulnerability, impact, and solutions, and mitigation. And we are really considering all the disciplines, including social one, also, even private, even finance, everything, and the quality of our reports is at the level of inclusion of all the information coming from everywhere. And this is why all, our report, from the time we are starting scoping meeting, to prepare our report, we need 10 steps. I am calling them 10 commandments. It is a sort of interaction between scientists and governments. But from scoping meeting, we are paying attention to involve, local knowledge in even our chapters and so on. And this is also was confirmed by the chair vision, our new chair, Jemski, in his, campaign, he was speaking about inclusion, diversity, and so on. And this is why the importance of inclusion of local knowledge is very important. But local knowledge also is a sort of, it is not published. Sometimes it is not in English. Climate change has no, language. It is not in English. It is not peer-reviewed literature. First thing I want to recommend you is all this at the same time, and even foundation can do it. Any knowledge like this can be, published and included in IPCC report. The drafting team will, by obligation, take a look for all this. Second thing, what you are providing is also can contribute to fill the gap of data, because we are using this historical data. But what we learn and what is expected for us to learn is to include all the information coming from any region in the world. And also in the process, and this is something which is an appeal to each one, IPCC is working like this home of glass. Anyone, because we are, as I said, any draft is sent to the expert for expert review. And anyone can play a role of expert reviewer just by self-declaration to say, I am expert who can review this chapter which is related to my discipline. And there are many chapters, linked to local knowledge. And to say, I will keep this draft confidential till the time they are approved by the panel. And this is, so that means the doors are open for anyone, including indigenous people, and also incorporating all what is local knowledge. I think it is a sort of indicator for the success of our next assessment cycle, for 7th cycle. Believe me, that proportion of local knowledge, the proportion of scientists involved deeply in the process will increase, substantially. So once again, thank you very much for this opportunity, and I hope that the 7th cycle with the limits to show that each one, everywhere, any place can say that the report of IPCC are mine. Thank you very much.
¿Puedo decir algo pequeño? Quiero recordar la COP26, 2026, en la 26, ¿no? Cuando
25.
estuvimos,
I
¿sí o
just
no?
want to
Que la
remember
primera
COP25.
fue la primera vez que, el último día logramos
The last day of
que
the
entraran los
COP25
pueblos
in
originarios
Madrid,
de la Minga.
we achieved
Entonces
a
reconocer
ceremony
también de
named
que
Minga,
gracias al
and
IPCC
native
es
people
que nosotros
arrived to the
pudimos
Science for
llegar con los
Climate Action
pueblos
Pavilion,
originarios al
and
pabellón.
because of the IPCC,
Y eso
native
fue
people
tremendo,
could
porque desde
be
ahí
in the
hacia
pavilion
adelante
organizing
pudieron
this
entrar los pueblos
ceremony, and it
originarios.
was a
Era muy
before and
extraño el
after a
tema.
turning point. So
Pero
thank
ahí hay algo
you
que es importante,
for that. It
que
was a
lo
very
conseguimos
important
juntos,
moment.
de
It was an
poder
achievement together with the
módulo del
IPCC
IPCC en
to
la
be able to
COP26,
bring native
poder
people
entrar 50,
to let them
60
enter
indígenas
in the
a
blue
una
zone of
sala
the
que fue
COP25,
impresionante
and
lo que
it
pasó
was a
ahí,
major
de todo,
ceremony.
¿no es
It
cierto?
was very
Así que eso lo
impressive.
quería recordar
So I
como
just want
algo
to
muy
remember that
importante que es
as a
histórico.
very historical and important
Yes,
moment.
yes, just to confirm, I think, yes, in the pavilions, yeah, and the pavilions, yeah, I think in the past COP, not only that, I think from Madrid, I think, it was a repetitive things. Believe me, the density of the participants in that pavilion was a record. So when we have to deal with this, really local knowledge sharing. The pavilion was full. Thank you very much.
No. Thank you so much, and thank you, Abdallah, for sort of highlighting the importance of indigenous peoples and local communities, their knowledge within the work of the IPCC and how it has been increased. And I think that's a value thing to say, that we're trying to do everything better, and we have still a way to go. But we are trying to be inclusive, and I think that's really important, especially when you talk about climate change, and climate change affects the north, and south first, yeah? Because reflecting on the impact on Greenland at the moment, and the hot weather they had, and the melting ice, and what it does to their livelihoods, I think it's really, really important to bring that into discussion. With that, I want to give the word to Michael Shushak. He is working for the United Nations as legal officer, but he's also co-founder of the Global Center for Human Change. And Michael, I mean, what the Center for Global Change is trying to achieve is all of us to live in harmony, yeah, with nature. But they already got it, though, don't they? I mean, they already had the prescription of how we actually should all be living with nature and how we should be inclusive of it. How do you take indigenous knowledge and local communities and knowledge from local communities within your work? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charlotte, and thanks to Francesca and Abdallah as well for your comments and for this presentation. It really struck a chord, and I think it did with all of us on how we can be looking to indigenous knowledge and communities to find and to resurrect some of these practices and some of this knowledge that we've lost sight of. Charlotte knows me in a couple of different capacities, and one of those is as a legal officer at the United Nations. And so one of the recent agreements that was adopted at the United Nations is called the BBNJ Agreement, which is a shorthand for the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or the agreement under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea on marine biodiversity beyond areas national, long title. But essentially it's about areas beyond national jurisdiction and what we can do to protect those areas. And so one message to the group here today is that in those negotiations, there was specific consideration and significance that was given to recognizing the interests of indigenous communities, but also to the science of indigenous knowledge. And that was given specific recognition and consideration in the agreement, which is the first time that had been done in the oceans environment, at least. in those treaties that we have purview over, in giving specific recognition to indigenous communities and traditional knowledge. And it did that in 3 different ways. So in the first instance, it's in the establishment of marine protected areas. So these are conservation areas in areas beyond national jurisdiction. And specific consideration needs to be given to the interests of indigenous communities in proposing the establishment of a marine protected area. So that's a very innovative element in the new treaty, giving special recognition to indigenous knowledge. Secondly, in the establishment of the scientific bodies that will run this new agreement, special recognition is also given to indigenous knowledge and making sure that they are represented on the scientific and technical body. And then thirdly is in the context of capacity building. So there's a number of trust funds. It's linked with Jeff and other funding, and that's another area where specific recognition is given to supporting the work and the capacity building programs of indigenous communities. So that's sort of the UN side of things that I can share. And then on the other work that I'm involved in, which is with the, it's called Global Alliance for Transformative Change. And it is exactly this. It's about changing the way we think about the planet and our global challenges. And if I trace the sort of the traditional ways that we think about the planet, one of those is through the conservation lens. You know, we think of the planet as a service, essentially, that needs to be maintained, and that's what a lot of the conservation objective is about. The other, of course, is about thinking about the planet as a resource to use. And these are traditionally the 2 ways that we think about the planet: a resource to use or a service to maintain. And if we can track that knowledge, those trains of thought, back into ancient times, you know, with the Egyptians and the Renaissance, you know, we can track that type of thinking that far back. But we can also track it through some of the agreements, some of the legal agreements, and some of the discussions that are taking place now between conservation and sustainable use. And these 2 ideas have become polarized as if they were in some way opposite, but they really aren't. Of course, the idea of conservation is included in sustainable use. But these terms have been co-opted for different things, and they've been presented and expressed in oppositional ways, but they really aren't. Conservation is part of sustainable use, and sustainable use has to be part of conservation. So this project is about changing the way that we think about the planet from those traditional ways of thinking as the planet is either a resource to use or a service to maintain, and thinking about it in a different way. Because quite simply, if we don't change the way that we think about the planet, we just simply won't have a future here. I mean, it's as simple as that. And many have come to the same conclusion, that is where we are in terms of addressing our significant challenges. So this is what I could share in terms of introductory remarks.
Thank you so much, Michael. I think why Francesca is giving you books, presents, always nice to have presents. I just want to acknowledge that all of you participated in this event. We find it's really important that, you know, like the knowledge of Native people are included in all decisions that we're making. And I think we really appreciate that both Michael and Abdallah sort of gave their input on how we can do better, and that we want to achieve what they already achieved, but how can we transform the way we live to live with harmony with nature. So with that, I want to say thank you all for coming, and Francesca, and we have these beautiful books out there, so I think you know, you can have a look at them, and you're welcome to take a copy with you, and this is what we want to bring to the Climate Week for this time, and we'll see you next year. Thank you.